So we're starting this morning with a live remote briefing from the Undersecretary of Agriculture, Robert Bonney. He's the Undersecretary for Farm Production and Natural Resources at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. A lot of people don't realize this, but the U.S. Forest Service is under the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And Robert Bonney has been a long time working on the issues around regenerative agriculture, soil health. How do we change our practices in food and agriculture to help to address climate change and increase livelihoods for farmers? And I'm really honored that he has made the time to be with us this morning to kick off day 2 of the Sun Valley Forum. So with that, shall we bring Undersecretary Bonney onto the screen? Hello, welcome.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here with us. So welcome to Sun Valley virtually. We wish you were here. We have all sorts of incredible innovations happening in our region, and we would love to be sharing them with you. And we look forward to having you perhaps next year in person or sometime in between our 2 gatherings so we can show off the incredible work of people here in central Idaho and beyond in our state. But thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, and good to be with all of you. You can probably get a sense of my, or maybe you can, and my jealousy of all of you are there and I'm here. But again, appreciate being with you, and I'm happy to talk about some of the things we're doing at USDA on climate smart agriculture and forestry, and then happy to, if we want to have some dialogue, some questions, happy to do that as well. So I'll try and keep my remarks short, if that makes sense, and
Perfect.
then I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you.
Great. So again, my name is Robert Bonney. I'm the Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation at USDA. I have the conservation programs of the Natural Resources Conservation Service under me. I have the Farm Service Agency that works with farmers on risk management and farm loans and other things. I have the Risk Management Agency that works on crop insurance, and then a business center that helps us run all those things. But I spend an enormous amount of my time on climate change. As I think everybody here knows, generally people think of climate change and they think of energy and fossil fuels. And of course, that makes a lot of sense. There's a growing understanding that agriculture and forestry have really important roles to play globally. If you look at emissions globally, somewhere in the neighborhood of north of 25% of emissions linked to agriculture and forestry. Domestically, agriculture and forestry is really important too. About 10% of our emissions in the United States are from agriculture, mostly from methane and nitrous oxide emissions associated with use of nitrogen fertilizers, and methane, of course, mostly in animal agriculture. Domestically, our forests account for about an equal sink on the other side. That is, our forests absorb carbon from the atmosphere, and so addressing issues like keeping forests as forests, addressing forest restoration in the West to reduce emissions from wildfire, incredibly important. We're used to thinking about environmental issues and climate change and having a lot of polarization, a lot of clashes. I've dealt my career in the Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act, and other things. The interesting thing about climate change is that there's a lot of alignment. There's alignment between good agricultural practices, good forestry practices, and what can be good for climate change, soil. So things we do to improve soil health, things like no-till agriculture, improved tillage practices, cover crops, other things can improve the productivity of agricultural lands, even while they reduce greenhouse gas emissions by storing carbon in the soil. Improve nutrient management practices that reduce nitrogen runoff, can also reduce nitrogen emissions, even while they're to the benefit of producers' bottom line by using nitrogen fertilizer more efficiently. Improve forest management practices, reforestation, forest restoration, use of wood products in construction. All these things can be good for climate, even while they're good for agriculture and forestry. And that's important. And so we think about policy, taking advantage of that is important. There is, of course, skepticism in rural America about what climate policy looks like, and there are also costs associated with taking many of these practices on. There's also limits to a regulatory approach. Regulation tends to be good at stopping bad things. In the case of climate smart agriculture and forestry, we're actually asking farmers, ranchers, and forest owners to adopt new practices. And that's why the approach you'll see from us is one around voluntary incentives, trying to create market values for the adoption of climate smart agriculture and forestry, collaboration with universities, with conservation groups, with states, and of course with farmers, ranchers, and forest owners. We're doing a lot to encourage the development of new markets, to create value for climate smart agriculture and forestry. One of the things we've done here, our sort of flagship, has been something called the Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities. We've done a lot of listening as we've developed this program to design it in a way that actually works for agriculture and, of course, works for the climate at the same time. This is not a conservation program, it's a commodity program. It's one that actually creates incentives for the broad-scale deployment of climate smart agriculture and forestry. And the program really does four things. We've asked for groups of producers to come forward with projects, and those projects do four things. One, they deploy climate smart agriculture and forestry at scale. Two, they measure, monitor, verify the impacts of those practices. Three, they think about equity to make sure that what they do, that their outreach is available to historically underserved producers, tribes, small, medium-sized producers, and others. And four, they try and create markets for whether it's climate smart commodities like climate smart soybean, climate smart wood, climate smart cotton, or maybe they're interested in greenhouse gas markets as well. We initially set aside $1 billion in the program. We got $20 billion in proposals from all of agriculture. We'll end up funding about $3.1 billion, 141 projects across all 50 states, across agriculture, livestock, forestry, cropland, you name it. Right now, we're in the midst of negotiating agreements. We've committed about $2 billion of it, and over the coming weeks and months, we'll commit the rest just as we enter into agreements with the lead partners in each of these programs. We're excited about it. We think folks in agriculture and forestry are excited about it. I was with the Obama administration in 2009, 2010. I can tell you that climate change was quite polarized then. In this instance, in this program, we've got agriculture and forestry, mainstream agriculture, organic agriculture, you name it, at the table, sleeves rolled up, willing to work with us. We've also got significant new resources from the Inflation Reduction Act, $19.5 billion in our conservation programs to support deployment of climate smart practices, to support technical assistance, outreach to farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners across all 50 states. We're looking at ways that we can staff up so that we can provide better service to deploy these resources. Partnerships are going to be absolutely critical, looking for ways that we can partner with nonprofits, landowner groups, and others on the ground to deploy these resources. And we're also looking for ways that we can streamline our programs to make them work better for producers. We're making big investments in science and measurement and monitoring. We're looking at ways that we can do a better job, more cost effectively and with greater accuracy to measure the impacts of the deployment of climate smart agriculture and forestry. And again, lots of support here from agriculture and forestry because they recognize if we do a better job of measuring, if we get the science right, that will both increase public confidence in the investments, but it'll also allow for the development of market-based approaches that will reward our farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners for deploying these practices. And let me just conclude by saying what we're trying to do here is build a collaborative model. We're trying to play the long game here. You all are used to seeing the pendulum swings in Washington, D.C. We think if we can build something that has the support of agriculture and forestry, but it's got a strong science component, a strong measurement component, that's got strong accountability, that we can build something that will withstand the pendulum swings, that will create new value for conservation and stewardship and agriculture. We'll reward farmers, ranchers, and forest owners. We'll create a model here that we think can both work here because it has bipartisan support, because it has rural, urban, suburban support, and that we believe can help impact how climate smart agriculture and forestry is addressed across the globe. So let me stop there and happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. And it's really exciting how the government's getting behind this with the measurement and bringing up the quality and the data so that we can build towards markets and really get major resources into rewarding farmers and others for their practices for the climate. Just we're heading into a year of the Farm Bill, so I have to ask. So, when we talk about this, rolling up our sleeves and really playing the long game, right now we have the Inflation Reduction Act and the other bills providing these resources to help to incentivize farmer practices. Ideally, the Farm Bill will adjust over time to be good for climate and not undermining the climate. And so just curious, as you look to the Farm Bill next year, are we able to pull in some of these activities into that Farm Bill and continue to evolve that year over year, hopefully?
Yeah, no doubt. And the new resources in the Inflation Reduction Act will be part of the conversation. There's some effort to pull some of them back. We think there'll be strong support from agriculture, conservation, certainly from the president and others to keep those resources in there. There are also opportunities to look at ways that we can that we can work on the forestry side, for example, the potential for resources there to help large-scale forest restoration in the West. There's also we've done some things, for example, in our crop insurance program to create some incentives for folks to adopt cover crops as part of that program. So there are lots of opportunities across the government, both in my shop here in the farm production and conservation, our scientists in other parts of the program. And so there are lots of opportunities in the Farm Bill. The good news is again, the climate debate around agriculture is not polarized right now. There's a lot of folks that are constructively sitting at the table looking at the ways that we can make these programs work better for the climate and for agriculture.
That's great news. Thank you. We will cross our fingers and hope for the best and also weigh in as we are able to through our own advocacy and engagement through the private sector, through the NGOs working on these issues. And so I just want to thank you for joining us. I know it has to be quick today, but we're very appreciative to you to making the time, and we look forward to having you here in Idaho next year.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.